Okay, so now you're making this movie about the police state. You have your sort of your mental guideline, your framework in terms of what a police state looks like. What are some of the examples that you highlight in the movie?
Well, I wanted to show two things in the movie. One is I wanted to show informants, whistleblowers, people who understand the architecture of a police state. Because I think the ordinary American can see these bad things happening, but kind of doesn't know how they work. And how they work is actually very tricky, because how they work sometimes defies explanation. I mean, think, for example, to think of an anomaly, think about the thousands of journalists and hundreds of news organizations that worked together to suppress the Hunter Biden story. Now, if this was a Stalinist regime where the government controls everything, I can totally see how that would happen. The order comes down, nobody covered the Hunter Biden story, right? If it was Goebbels, he would be the propaganda minister. He lets everybody in the press know anybody who covers the Hunter Biden story is going to be arrested by the Gestapo. But here we have these ostensibly independent news organizations. You would think, and again, applying libertarian theory, that there would be some rebel writer for the Dallas Morning News or the Sacramento Bee who goes, you know what, if everyone doesn't want to cover the Hunter Biden story, they're idiots. I'll go out front. I'll cover it. I'll have the credit. I will get the biggest story of the year. But it's very interesting that no one did that. And not counting the New York Post. Yeah. None of them did that. And in fact, they worked to suppress the New York Post story. And that tells you that the amount of sort of, it's not a conspiracy in the sense that they didn't get on a morning Zoom call, right? They didn't all say, okay, let's agree. None of us will do it. They were more like birds in a flying formation going to Florida. They're not openly talking to each other. Maybe they're getting signals from the bird flying to your right, but they're operating in a sort of unified formation. So to come back, the film shows how the police state is built, how it functions. But the other type of person in the film is I wanted to show a lot of ordinary guys who are going about their business and they feel the hot breath of the police state, or what Orwell calls the boot stamping on the human face. And a film can do this with unique power because it doesn't just tell you, it shows you, it takes you there. And because there's going to be guys who go, Dinesh, I'm not Trump, and I didn't go in the Capitol on January 6th, and I pay my taxes, I'm a law-abiding guy, nothing's going to happen to me, Dinesh. And I got to say, well, don't be too sure. In fact, your premise is completely wrong.
Well, people just need to look north to know that that's not the case. You don't have to even have participated in the Ottawa protest. If you donated to make political contributions to what I always highlight was a federally incorporated not-for-profit, you're on a list. You're susceptible to having your bank account frozen. So people think it's never going to be me. I'm never going to be David Koresh at Waco. And then lo and behold, it's some grandmother up in Alaska who came down to DC to speak her voice, with her feet. The example that we were just talking about. Oh my goodness.
We were talking about
the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Oh yes.
Everyone's familiar who's watching now is familiar with that story. But when I say corruption doesn't require the briefcase anymore, it doesn't even require the emails because everybody knows what the collective intent is. But there are overlapping players in these institutions that facilitate this migration, so to speak. You highlighted some of them in the documentary. The overlapping players who make their way from intelligence into the media. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, the apparatus of censorship is very interesting because, again, we are operating in a society where we've got a public sector and a private sector. And the octopus of censorship stretches across both so that it involves academia, the media, the digital platforms, nonprofit groups, and the government. And there's a lot of traffic between these places. Academics end up in the Biden administration. People leave the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, and then they become lawyers for Twitter. So we show all that in the movie. But just to simplify it, an academic who studies disinformation, let's say at Yale, is making a list of the 500 greatest purveyors of disinformation. These idiots are spending all their day reading the tweets of people like you and me, and then they go, okay, we got all these guys on the list, and the list goes over to the Biden regime, and they separate it by topic.